Herb. Thank you so much, Hugh.
Yeah, no problem.
For the
No,
record,
this guy.
I know you.
this meeting is being webcast. The directors have received the relevant written materials in advance of today's meetings and are free to ask any questions at any time. Please note that we welcome public comment on the items on the following agenda. To ensure maximum opportunity for participation, speakers representing themselves may speak for up to 2 minutes each. Those representing groups may speak up to 4 minutes with one speaker per group. Speakers' comments may address only the items considered at today's meeting. Before we begin the substantive portion of the meeting, I would like to ask the directors whether anyone has any potential conflict of interest with respect to any of the items on today's agenda. If so, I would ask you to please make an appropriate disclosure on the record at this time, and we will then be sure that you may recuse yourself from any discussion or vote with regard to such item or items. Hearing none, we will move on. Our first order of business is the approval of the minutes of the directors' meetings of January 31, 2017, and April 19, 2017. Any comments, corrections, revisions? If not, we'll have a motion for approval, please.
Motion.
Second. All in favor?
Right.
Thank you. The motion carries. Now, the next item of business is Robin's, as the president of the corporation, request for authorization for the corporation to purchase commercial general liability insurance. Robin?
Yes, thank you, Henry. Thank everyone for attending today. I really appreciate it. Of course, the directors will recall that Tishman Construction Corporation is building the transformer building under a CMAR, or Construction Manager at Risk contract, and the joint venture of Lindleys and Turner are building the expansion project under a design-build contract. Both those contracts require the builder to maintain adequate insurance at levels which were dictated by and have been reviewed by ESD and CCDC insurance consultants. The CMAR contracts require Tishman to carry its own liability insurance. The design-build contract requires Lindleys Turner to carry its own liability insurance. And in addition, the insurance policies are required to name CCDC as an additional insured. All the subcontractors are required to carry liability insurance. And under both of those contracts, CCDC is fully indemnified by the builders. This still leaves open the question of what additional insurance CCDC should procure for itself as further protection against risk. The directors will recall that originally Tishman, the transformer constructing entity, was retained as a construction manager as agent in connection with the transformer. And with that arrangement, CCDC was taking on a fair amount of the risk. Obviously now with the CMAR arrangement, that risk has been transferred to Tishman. Around the same time, CCDC also entered into a memorandum of understanding with the New York State Dormitory Authority, or DASNY, so that DASNY would be the permitting agency both for the transformer and the expansion work. And pursuant to that MOU, CCDC was required to carry its own general liability insurance. And additionally, the ability of CCDC to obtain and maintain adequate defense counsel is very important to us and was another factor in our insurance review. This is another way of saying that basically we are trying to right-size the insurance policies that we're carrying for the project. And as a result of the review undertaken, staff is recommending two actions, both set forth in your board materials. The first would be to cancel the transformer liability policy procured when we were employing Tishman as agent, because the consensus is that that is no longer necessary under the CMAR arrangement. And the second item for the directors would be to purchase a $10 million general commercial liability policy in CCDC's own name to cover both the transformer and the expansion work. The results of these two actions actually would be a net savings to the corporation, since the refund from the cancellation would be approximately $1.8 million, and the cost of the new insurance recommended would be approximately $1,635,000. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I'd just say I think this is a very good idea. We've had conversations about insurance in the past. My recollection that the members had asked for a written presentation of the insurance coverage that we have in place for this project. And I'm not sure that was ever circulated.
Okay, that
Would it be
could,
possible, just I mean, I think it's very good, the change that you're making here makes a lot of sense. But I
Well,
do think it would be wise to have
yes,
some
okay.
type of a presentation so that the directors can have a sense of the scope of the insurance that we have in place, and with some type of a description or whatever from our insurance
No,
experts.
that'd be easy to take care of. Of course, I think at our last meeting, we approved the builder's risk for the expansion, and so it'd be easy to put together a whole
Yeah,
list of that.
I think,
Yes.
you know, it's hard to so when you're seeing these piecemeal items and you're looking at individual policies, it's hard to understand the whole scope of the insurance. So if that-
And
if-
again, that was undertaken as part of the right sizing of the insurance.
Yeah.
We did exactly that exercise, so we
Right,
have
that
to
was
get
my,
that.
my recollection was that you were
Right.
doing that, so if you could just circulate to the members whatever the upshot of that was and a summary of the insurance that we have in place. Obviously, we're interested in the insurance covering our own activities, so if you could,
Yes, we will do that.
that would be great.
Are there any other comments or questions from any of the directors or the public? If not, we'll entertain a motion, please.
So moved.
Second, all in favor?
Right.
All right, thank you, the motion carries. The next item, which is not an action item, is Robin's President's report.
Thank you again. I am very happy to report that both transformer and expansion construction activities are in full swing. I know it's early, but on schedule and on budget. In connection with the transformer, many of the utility relocations that are necessary for the project are either complete or nearing completion, including relocating water, sewer, and electrical services. David Thurm, who was introduced at the last meeting and is our project manager, has been instrumental in coordinating all of that work, and we are very appreciative of that. Eunice Jackson, ESD Council, has also been working very hard with the various utility agencies in terms of making sure that those relocations flow smoothly, and we really appreciate that. So we are coordinating with Con Ed, we are coordinating with City DEP, we are coordinating with Verizon's cable services, et cetera, making sure that the below-grade aspects of the project are ready to accommodate the expansion as it comes forward. Also in connection with the transformer, the bulk of the trades have been awarded. Long-term lead items have been procured and tested. If you go to the site today, you will see that Tishman is erecting a crane, which will be necessary to help put together the building, and work continues apace. So we're very excited that the transformer seems to be coming along. The expansion project is not quite so far along because its schedule was behind the transformer. But if you go to the site now, you will see it's essentially level to grade. The demolition has taken place. There are still a few concrete slabs that will need to be taken out. But Javits North, which Alan used to great effect for a very long time, is now gone. We have begun to get ready for the excavation and the laying of the foundations. The permits have been issued by DASNY, who's been doing a terrific job of permitting all the necessary work on a very timely basis, and we certainly appreciate DASNY's work. So the excavation will begin very shortly. In fact, it may be as soon as today, this week.
First case on the meeting as I left.
There you go. We're very excited. I think I had told the directors before that basically excavation and caissons and the construction of the expansion will happen from the west towards 12th Avenue to the east towards 11th Avenue. And so if you go to the site, you will see that excavations in the lane of caissons have begun closer to 12th Avenue. But as the weeks and months roll by, you'll see that rolling to the east. And we can mark our progress that way. In addition to all of the work down on the site, of course, we continue to work very closely with our partners, including DASNY, as I mentioned, where I work very closely with David and the project management team on a daily, if not hourly basis. And we are working very closely with our construction integrity monitor and the IG's office, the New York State Inspector General's office. Last month, I had asked David Thurm, as the project director, to give a little bit of an update for the directors, and so that you would know who he was and what he is doing. But the directors know also that integrity is a key component of any massive public infrastructure project, and K2 Intelligence has been retained as our project's construction integrity monitor. So for today's meeting, I've asked that Paul Ryan from K2 speak to you briefly about his role in overseeing the project so you can become familiar with the integrity controls which we are putting in place. Paul?
Thank you, Robin. Pleasure to be here today. Just very brief background for those of you who don't know me. I started my legal career at the Manhattan District Attorney's Office, started in the trial division. From there, went to the construction industry strike force, and focused on construction fraud cases. From there, I went to the State Inspector General's office, where I helped develop and had a contract and construction fraud unit, and then joined K2 Intelligence. And K2 Intelligence is an investigation and compliance firm, and we have been conducting integrity monitorships of construction projects for close to 20 years, including some iconic projects in New York, such as the World Trade Center rebuild, MTA, Second Avenue Subway, 7-line extension, and East Side access. So we wanted to just talk a high-level overview of what we're doing and how we're conducting our work. First, I'd like to say that we have received tremendous support from CCDC, ESD, the IG's office, as well as the project management team, and we're glad to have received that because it's making our job a lot easier. Our team consists of primarily attorneys, engineers, forensic accountants, investigators, as well as research analysts. And our process essentially includes first conducting a risk assessment. A risk assessment really is broken up into components, the first of which is to understand the requirements of the project. And what we mean by that is what are the prevailing wage requirements, what are the MBE goals, things like that. Once we have an understanding of that, we want to review all the policies and procedures, not just for the contractor, but for the PM and CCDC to see how they're mitigating those risks. And there we conduct an evaluation. Once we have the evaluation conducted, we create a fraud prevention program, which really is a roadmap to how we're going to conduct our monitoring. And in this case, since the project has already started, we're really doing both at the same time. We're conducting the risk assessment as well as conducting the on-site monitoring. Our monitoring really, just as an example, includes subcontractor vetting. It includes review of requisitions and change orders. It includes review of QA, QC for construction processes. And our focus areas really are all of what we mentioned already, but we're looking at security and safety. We're looking at integrity of subcontractors. We're looking at any reviews for potential overbilling on the project. And as a high-level overview of what we're doing, I said this is already in process. We have begun our monitoring as well as the risk assessment, and we will proceed accordingly.
Thank you, Paul. We have several Pauls working on the project, so I often refer to him as Paul Ryan, but and also it bears repeating, I've said it before, but obviously we take the expenditure of public taxpayer dollars very seriously, and we're delighted to have Paul as part of our team to make sure that that happens.
Robin, can I ask a question?
Yes, of course.
Paul, could you talk a little bit about the nature of the reporting that you give or make to CCDC and the operating, and so what records do we keep, what records do we keep of your work so that we actually know, I mean, your site presence and so forth?
So we will be providing reports as needed for discrete issues. So if there's something that comes up, for instance, in a particular requisition, we will provide an overview of what happened there. I believe we're going to go to quarterly reporting of just overall efforts, but really we're in constant contact with the team, and as needed, we reduce things to writing.
So I'm asking because of from experience on the World Trade Center site, and where there was a history of, there was some type of a daily and monthly and weekly summary reports on site activity, on activities you would engage in. So you're able to look back, you're able to say, oh, these people actually examined this
Sure.
event, contract, whatever.
I guess there's two-level reporting. So we have internal reporting that we use for our records, which are used to produce reports to CCDC. Those reports include site activity reports. When someone's on site, if they're interviewing employees, if they're just observing conduct, we generate a report on that. When someone reviews a process or a requisition, they're generating an internal report on that. And that becomes the basis for our reviews, which in turn will generate the report to CCDCs with any issues or just that things are going well.
And so are there scheduled reports to CCDC?
We're still working out the exact schedule of how that's going to work, but there will be, yes.
Because I would like to have some type of a report to the board members from
Okay.
the integrity monitor.
Okay.
Particularly an exception report, to the extent that there are any, if you're observing any issues, it doesn't have to be current, in the sense that there could be, we found an issue and this is how we addressed it, but I do think we should, the members should get some type of a report of your activity outlining what you're up to, what you're finding, and when you have found problems and how they've been addressed.
And to be fair, exceptions are quite common with any process, so there's, you know, the gradations of what an exception is.
But it doesn't have to be current. I don't think you should be necessarily sending around memos to everybody, oh, we found out yesterday that Mr. Jones didn't show up and but billed for it. But I think that a summary after the fact would be helpful. And I think it's important that the board has a view of how you're conducting, a direct view of how you're conducting this, you're working with Robin, so that we know, we don't find out afterwards, oh, this was the level. We know currently the level of integrity.
So we'll work with CCDC to come up with the appropriate reporting.
Yes, good idea.
Yeah, and if you could circulate that to the members, that would be
Yes.
great. Thank you.
And, Mr. Chairman, that would conclude my president's report.
Okay, I'd just like to ask the question, following up on what David said. Is that something that would be, should be circulated in any written form, or should
Well,
that be an oral report?
I was wondering that myself. I think the answer to your question is I would defer to counsel, but. I don't know
Your
if-
counsel.
Well, yes. I don't know. I try not to be my own legal counsel.
I'd like to look at what it is that the report's gonna look like and what it would contain before we decide how we best disseminate the information.
I faced this issue in the past, and I will say this, I think the most important, there are two different issues here. One is, we need to have the internal reporting for the benefit and protection of the project and the CCDC, that doesn't necessarily have to go to the members, but that is documented so that after the fact, we can look, we have some contemporaneous business records of what happened. We need to know that that's being generated. I think that a high-level overview of that is plenty to circulate and shouldn't violate any, confidentiality provisions. But if it doesn't, maybe you could raise that, we could work it out. I'm not asking for that you send the daily reports or the weekly reports. But I am asking that there be some type of current reporting so that members can know, oh, there's an issue here, these fellows are dealing with it, so we don't find out about it.
Right, and, I mean, we can look at ways to do that in a way it doesn't, in any way compromise the confidentiality of the people who might be interviewing, the report may involve.
Absolutely not, you don't want to, totally. There is, we can, in another context, talk about that, but there's a lot of, as you know, a lot of government experience with dealing with this problem and reporting up to a board level.
Any other questions or comments? Questions for Robin? Okay, we have another action item, and that is Robin will present a request for authorization for the corporation to amend its contract for inspection services with Tectonic Engineering and Surveying Consultants. Robin?
Yes, thank you. The directors will recall that, as required by law, CCDC, as the project owner, is required to directly undertake certain specialty inspections and testing, essentially as an independent check and balance on builder activity on the site. This includes things like examinations of soils and foundations, examination of steel construction, examination of concrete cores, etc. Some time ago, the directors authorized CCDC to retain firms to conduct these specialty inspections at the transformer site, and that work is proceeding fine. In June of this year, the directors authorized CCDC to extend those existing transformer contracts to include initial inspection and testing at the expansion site as well for a limited time in order to avoid delay while CCDC undertook a procurement for the full scope of the expansion inspections. I know many people think of the expansion of the Javits facility as one huge, giant project. The directors, of course, will recall that there is a separate project called the Transformer Building and a separate project called the Expansion Building. And so the contractors that CCDC contracts for are distinguished between the transformer and or the expansion so that we don't have confusion. But in connection with the procurement for inspection services for the expansion, because we already did that for the transformer. But in connection with the procurement for the expansion, an RFP was issued in August. 8 firms responded, and 4 firms were shortlisted, as described in your materials. An internal review committee evaluated the proposals on the basis of team member qualifications and firm experience, pricing structure, and diversity practices. The committee rated Tectonic's proposal highest overall. Tectonic is providing the bulk of the inspection services at the transformer site and has begun such services at the expansion site, and all of that work is satisfactory. Tectonic's technical score was significantly higher than the technical scores for the other 3 shortlisted firms. Comparing pricing apples to apples was a bit complicated by several factors. One, including that a total of 17 different service categories are eligible to be bid on, or were eligible to be bid on, and respondents' bids differed. They had different rates for these different categories. Not everybody responded to the same category, et cetera. And further complicated by the fact that the exact amount of services needed under each of the categories is not yet known with certainty. But in trying to account for these variables, it would appear that Tectonic is not the low bid. I just want to make that clear to the directors. But as indicated in your materials, there was an approximate 15% difference between the top 3 respondents, and this indicated to staff that the overall price of the bids received was reasonable. Tectonic's technical superiority more than made up for any pricing differential, and therefore the directors are being asked to authorize an amendment to our existing contract with Tectonic to include all specialty inspection and testing services for the expansion project for the increased amount of up to a maximum of $2.6 million through the expansion completion, approximately 2021, or March of 2021. Thank you. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
2.6 or 2.9?
Thank you. The original contract for the transformer services was about about $150,000. Then in the summertime, in order to accommodate the initial expansion services, we raised that to about $350,000. And so on top of the $350,000 now, which has already been authorized, we would ask for another 2.6, which is in line with the bids, recognizing that not all of that first $350,000 has been spent. So obviously we will spend out of that contract, that initial amendment, before we tap into the 2.6. But based on the bids received, we thought the 2.6 was a likely target number for the overall services needed for the next 4 years. And obviously, to the extent that we don't need it, we won't spend it.
Is it possible to talk about, this is a crucial contract for us, obviously. Is it possible
Yes.
to talk about who was on the selection committee? Or is that something that we don't talk about because we want to protect the system? My question is, do
Well,
we
I
have
listed-
outside support?
Yeah, I listed. I was on the committee, and I listed the titles of the people who were on the committee. Yes, David. Outside support was very important to this. The PM actually had a representative on the wasn't David. Sorry, it was David's assistant. But it was critically important to us to have the PM's expertise in AECOM, particularly, so that they could talk us through the 17 different categories. They could talk us through the pricing in the 17 different categories. They could help us. I mean, we did go into quite significant detail down to what were the qualifications of the inspectors who would be making the inspections. We asked one of the final shortlisted respondents, because it wasn't clear in their original submission, to give us the resumes of the people who would be doing the inspections. So yes, it was very important to have that outside help, and we appreciate the PM supplying that.
Any other questions or comments? If not, we'll entertain a motion for approval.
So moved.
Second? All in favor? Thank you. The motion carries. I want to thank everybody for your participation today, and there being no further business, we'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Thank you very much.